Imagine the sterile hum of hospital lights flickering over my son's tiny body hooked to machines that beep like a countdown to heartbreak. I'm there alone gripping his hand as surgeons prep for the emergency operation that could save his life or end it. My baby boy fighting a congenital defect we caught too late. And where are mom and dad? The chairs labeled mom and dad in the waiting room. Empty. Ghostly empty. They knew. I called them sobbing, begging for support, but they chose silence. 3 days later, as I stagger home exhausted, my phone buzzes. A text from mom. Sweetie, can you wire $50,000 early? We need it for your sister's wedding flowers and venue. It's her big day. My blood boils. 50 grand. For petals and a party while my child fought for breath without them, rage surges through me like fire. I don't scream. I don't call. Instead, I grab a crumpled dollar bill, stuff it in an envelope, and scribble, "This is your priority. Sent, no regrets." But that's just the spark. What follows is a wildfire of secrets, unraveling hidden recordings, frozen bank accounts, and a DNA bombshell that shatters our perfect family facade. On the wedding day, as vows hang in the air, footage rolls my empty hospital vigil, their callous demands exposed. Parents collapse in humiliation. The room freezes in shock. My sister, she rips off her veil and chooses truth over tradition. Stick around, because this isn't just revenge, it's redemption. Shocking twists will leave you gasping, and by the end, you'll cheer the ultimate payoff, a woman rising from betrayal, forging a real family from the ashes. You won't believe how it all explodes. My name is Emily Harper. I'm 31, a graphic designer who spent the last 8 years building a quiet little life in Charlotte, North Carolina, far enough from my parents' polished suburb in Atlanta to breathe. I've always been the independent one, the daughter who paid her own way through college, who moved out at 22, who learned early that asking mom and dad for help usually came with strings thick enough to strangle you. I thought I had insulated myself from their expectations. I was wrong. The call came at 3:17 a.m. on a Tuesday in early last October. I was half asleep when the pediatric cardiologist's calm, terrible voice told me my 18-month-old son Noah had been rushed from his regular checkup straight into an ambulance. A previously undetected heart defect had collapsed one of his pulmonary arteries. He needed emergency open heart surgery within hours, or he wouldn't see the weekend. I don't remember driving to the children's hospital. I only remember arriving in the surgical waiting area still wearing mismatched shoes, clutching Noah's favorite stuffed giraffe like it could protect him. The waiting room was painted that soft institutional blue that's supposed to feel soothing, but only ever feels cold. There were two chairs side by side with a little brass plaque between them that read Mom and Dad. I stared at those chairs for 9 straight hours. I called my parents 4 times. The first 3 went to voicemail. On the fourth, my mother finally picked up, sounding breezy, almost laughing. "Emily, honey, we're at the country club finalizing the menu tasting for Lainey's wedding. Can this wait? We're deciding between salmon and filet." I told her, voice cracking, that her grandson was about to have his chest cracked open. There was a long pause, then a sigh. "We'll light a candle for him, sweetheart. You know how these things stress your father's heart. We'll be praying." Click. The chair stayed empty. Not one text, not one flower delivery, nothing. Noah made it through the surgery barely. When the doctor finally came out, mask dangling, and said the words, "He's stable," I collapsed against the wall and cried so hard a nurse thought I'd fainted. I spent the next 3 nights sleeping upright in a vinyl recliner beside his crib in the cardiac ICU, waking every time the monitors beeped too fast. My parents never came. Not once. 3 days after we were moved to a regular room, I was sitting in the dim light, Noah finally breathing on his own, when my phone lit up. A text from mom. "Sweetie, quick favor. We're short on the venue deposit, and the florist wants half up front tomorrow. Can you transfer $50,000 early? Lainey's colors are blush and champagne, and the peonies are flown in from Ecuador. It would mean the world. Love you." I stared at those words until they blurred. $50,000. For peonies. While my baby had tubes coming out of his chest and 2 chairs in the waiting room still carried the chill of their absence. Something inside me snapped, not loudly, not with screaming or thrown phones, but quietly, like ice breaking on a winter lake. I set the phone down, walked to the family lounge where patients' relatives sometimes left spare change and magazines, and found a single crumpled dollar bill someone had dropped on the floor. I smoothed it out on the table. Then I picked up one of the complimentary envelopes from the volunteer desk, the kind meant for thank you notes. I remembered suddenly and sharply a letter my mother had written me when I was 12 and had chicken pox the week of her garden club gala. She'd slipped it under my bedroom door. Appearances matter, Emily. Sometimes we hide the messy parts so the picture stays pretty. I hadn't understood it then. I understood it now. I didn't scream, didn't reply. I just found a single dollar bill and an envelope. I stood there in the family lounge, the crumpled dollar smoothed between my fingers, now the envelope crisp and white under the harsh fluorescent light. My hand didn't shake. It should have, but it didn't. I took the pen from the volunteer basket, pressed the paper against the wall, and wrote 4 words in careful block letters. This is your priority. I folded the bill, once slid it inside, sealed it, and wrote their address on the front in the same deliberate strokes. No return label, no explanation. I walked straight to the mailbox in the hospital lobby, dropped it in, and listened to the soft metallic clunk as it disappeared. Then I went back to Noah's room, sat down in the recliner, and waited for the guilt that never came. The memories arrived instead, uninvited but familiar, the way old bruises ache when the weather turns cold. I was 16 the first time I truly understood what family image meant to them. I'd been accepted early decision to RISD, my dream art school, but the scholarship only covered half. I asked if they could help with the rest. Dad was hosting the firm's holiday party that night. Mom was in pearls and panic about the ice sculpture. She pulled me aside in the foyer while caterers bustled past. Emily, darling, we can't have people thinking we're struggling. Just tell everyone it's a full ride. We'll figure something quieter later. Later never came. I took extra shifts at the coffee shop, lived on ramen, and learned to smile when relatives bragged about my full scholarship. Appearances mattered more than truth. Then there was the miscarriage at 24. I'd been dating my ex for 2 years, thought we were careful, but biology doesn't care about plans. I called my mother from the emergency room, bleeding and terrified. She asked if anyone else knew. When I said no, she sighed with relief. Good. Keep it that way. You don't want whispers at the club. She sent Lily's the next week with a card that read, "Congratulations on the promotion," because that's what she told her friends I was celebrating. I buried the grief alone because grief is messy, and messy doesn't photograph well for Christmas cards. Each memory rose and settled like sediment, heavy and undeniable. This dollar wasn't about 50,000 or even about flowers flown in from Ecuador. It was about every time they chose the polished surface over the cracked foundation underneath. It was about every time they decided love was something you curated, not something you showed up for. I had spent my whole life trying to earn a place at a table where the seats were already assigned to illusion. Noah's surgery stripped the varnish clean off. I saw the rot underneath, and for the first time, I stopped sanding the edges to make myself fit. I leaned my head against the cool wall beside Noah's crib and listened to the steady beep of his monitor. My little boy with his dark curls and the scar that would run down his chest like a zipper before he was 2 years old. He deserved parents who ran toward emergencies, not away from them. He deserved a mother who taught him that loyalty isn't a performance. Sending that dollar felt like drawing a line in the sand with a sword instead of a stick, quiet, final, and impossible to misinterpret. Later that afternoon, Dr. Patel knocked softly and stepped inside. She closed the door behind her, expression gentle but serious. Emily, the surgical team, reviewed the post-op echoes. The repair held beautifully, but the right ventricle is showing unexpected strain. We're going to need frequent monitoring, echocardiograms every 3 months for at least the next 5 years, possibly longer. Medications, cardiology visits, maybe another procedure down the line. She paused, searching my face. This isn't the news any parent wants, but we caught it early. He's going to have a full life. It's just going to be a life with more appointments than most. I nodded, throat tight. 5 years, hundreds of miles driven to specialists, thousands in copay schedules built around heart scans instead of playdates. And I would do it alone because the people who should have been holding my hand were busy color-coding escort cards. The isolation settled over me like a second skin, familiar now. I thanked Dr. Patel, kissed Noah's warm forehead, and felt the last thread of obligation to my parents snap clean in two. I thought that was the end of it. $1, one message, one closed door. I thought I had drawn the boundary and they would finally feel the weight of it. I thought it would end there, but then my sister called me sobbing. The phone barely had time to cool in my hand before it lit up again with Lainey's name. I almost let it ring out, but the sound of her crying, raw and ragged, stopped me cold. I pressed accept and put it on speaker so I could keep rocking Noah's crib with my foot while he dozed. Emmy. Her voice cracked like thin ice. I'm so sorry. I'm the worst sister on earth. I should have been there. I wanted to be there, I swear. The words tumbled over each other, soaked in guilt and mascara. Mom told me Noah was fine, just a little procedure, and that you were handling it like a champ and didn't want anyone hovering. I believed her because I'm an idiot. Please don't hate me, I closed my eyes. Lainey had always been the golden child, the one whose life was planned around bridal magazines before she could spell the word bride. But the tremor in her voice right then was real. I don't hate you, Lane, I said quietly. I'm just tired. She sobbed harder. The wedding's in 9 days and everything's perfect, and I feel like the worst human alive for even caring about that right now. Mom keeps saying if any drama leaks out, it'll ruin everything that people have flown in from 3 states, that the country club has a cancellation fee bigger than a car. She made it sound like if I let anything overshadow my day, I'd be selfish forever. Please, please don't do anything that will blow this up. I'll make it up to you, I promise. After the honeymoon, I'll be the best aunt in the world. I listened to her beg and felt the old ache of being the one who was always asked to step aside so the picture could stay pretty. For once, I didn't reassure her. I let the silence stretch until she whispered, "Are you still there?" "I'm here," I said. "We'll talk soon." She hung up, sounding small and terrified, and I thought that might be the end of the conversation. It wasn't. An hour later, an unknown number rang. I answered, expecting another hospital department. Instead, a calm male voice said, "Emily, this is Ryan Laney's fiancé. Do you have 5 minutes?" Ryan and I had met exactly twice. He seemed decent, steady, the kind of man who wore khakis without irony. I told him I had 5 minutes. He got straight to the point. "3 weeks ago, your mom pulled me aside after the rehearsal venue walkthrough. She said the florist and photographer needed final payment sooner than expected and asked if I could wire $25,000 quietly separate from the joint account she shares with your dad, because Lainey was already stressed and they didn't want to burden her. She swore it was just bridging a gap and that you were covering the bigger portion later." He paused. "I sent it, Emily. I thought I was helping family. Lainey has no idea. She thinks her parents paid for everything themselves, like they've been bragging." The room tilted a little, $25,000 behind my sister's back while Noah was fighting for every heartbeat. I gripped the phone so hard my knuckles went white. "I only found out about Noah yesterday," Ryan continued. "Lainey was crying in the shower and finally told me the truth. I'm sick about it. Whatever you need from me, you have it. I'm done letting them play puppet master." Something fierce and protective flared in my chest. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't alone in this. "Thank you for telling me," I said. My voice didn't waver. "Here's what I need. If they keep hiding things, if they try to pretend none of this happened at the wedding, we don't let them. We tell the truth, all of it, when it will matter most. Quietly, cleanly, in front of everyone they care about impressing. Are you in?" There was no hesitation. "I'm in. Lainey will be too once she stops panicking. She loves you. She's just scared of them, same as we all were." We spoke for another 10 minutes, mapping out possibilities the way generals plot battle lines, text recordings, documents, timing everything calm and precise. When we hung up, I felt the first flicker of power instead of pain. That night, Lainey called again, calmer now, voice thick from crying but steadier. Ryan told me everything she whispered. "I'm so angry I can't see straight. How could they do this to you, to Noah?" She was quiet for a long moment, then said something that landed like a stone in still water. "Emmy, have you ever wondered why you're so different from the rest of the family? Like, really wondered?" I frowned at the phone. "What do you mean?" But she backtracked quickly, the way people do when they've let something slip. "Nothing. Forget I said it. I'm just emotional." She changed the subject to Noah's latest ultrasound, but the question hung in the air long after we said goodnight, sharp and strange, and impossible to ignore. 2 days later, Ryan texted, "Can you talk?" I called him from the hospital parking lot, Noah napping in the back seat after yet another follow-up. Ryan's voice was low, almost conspiratorial. "I've been thinking about what your mom said when she asked for the money. something about keeping certain things quiet, like always. I started paying closer attention. He took a breath. Emily, he had one more thing to show me, something he recorded weeks ago. I pulled into the quiet corner of the hospital parking garage, cut the engine, and put the phone on speaker. Ryan didn't waste time with greetings. "I'm sending you the file now," he said, voice low, almost a whisper. "I started recording calls after your mom cornered me the first time. Didn't know why then. Just felt off. Listen to this one. It's from 3 weeks ago." The audio crackled once, then my mother's voice filled the car, syrupy and familiar, the same tone she used when convincing the garden club president to let her chair the spring gala. "Ryan, darling, I hate bothering you with this, truly, but the photographer raised his fee last minute, and the venue needs the balance by Friday or they'll release the date. Your father-in-law and I are stretched thin with the club dues this quarter. Could you possibly move 25,000 into the account I texted you quietly? Lainey gets so anxious about money, and we don't want anything spoiling her joy." I felt my stomach knot. Ryan's recorded reply was polite but careful. "Of course, Mrs. Harper. I'll take care of it today." Mom laughed, light and relieved. "You're an angel. And Ryan's sweetheart Emily doesn't need to know details. She's got enough on her plate with the baby. Just make everything look perfect. That's all that matters." The recording ended. The silence that followed was louder than any scream I could have managed. Make everything look perfect. 4 words that summed up my entire childhood. My mother didn't even sound cruel, just practical, the way someone might discuss hiding scuff marks on the baseboards before company arrives. Then came the part that turned my blood to ice. Ryan spoke again, softer. "There's 30 more seconds. Keep listening." The same call continued. Mom's voice dropped to a conspiratorial murmur. "Do it exactly like back then with the older girl. Transfer it. Say nothing. Don't let her know anything. Some children simply aren't built for the full picture, Ryan. It's kinder this way." The older girl, my pulse hammered in my ears. I was the younger daughter. Lainey was the older one. What had they hidden from her, the same way they were now hiding everything from me? What transaction? What secret had been buried under layers of smiles and monogrammed linens years ago? I thanked Ryan, ended the call, and sat motionless until Noah stirred in his car seat and whimpered. Only then did I move, driving home on autopilot, the recording looping in my mind like a poison I couldn't spit out. That evening, after Noah was finally asleep, I locked myself in my tiny home office and began gathering ammunition. I printed every medical bill, every insurance explanation of benefits, every receipt from the pharmacy, runs at 2 in the morning. The stack grew thick and ugly, numbers that told the real story of the past month. Then I plugged the SD card from my phone into the laptop and pulled up the silent video I had taken on a whim the day of Noah's surgery. 9 hours condensed into a 30-second clip, the empty mom and dad chairs under fluorescent light. My reflection pale in the window, the clock on the wall ticking past minutes and hours while I waited alone. I watched it twice, tears sliding hot down my cheeks, then saved it to a thumb drive labeled simply truth. I wasn't crying from weakness anymore. I was crying from clarity. Every piece I collected felt like loading a magazine, slow, deliberate, and deadly accurate. My parents had spent decades teaching me that some truths were too untidy to be spoken aloud. I was done learning that lesson. I slept maybe 3 hours, woke before dawn, and stared at the ceiling while Noah's monitor glowed soft green beside the crib. The phrase kept circling, like back then with the older girl. Whatever they had done to Lainey, whatever they had convinced Ryan to keep quiet, it was the same pattern, the same casual cruelty dressed up as protection. I thought of my sister pacing in her wedding gown, in a few days smiling for cameras while our parents smiled wider, proud of the masterpiece they had staged. The thought made me feel almost calm, the kind of calm that comes right before lightning strikes. I was copying the hospital footage to my cloud drive, triple-checking that it was backed up in 3 separate places when my phone buzzed on the desk. Unknown number, local area code. I answered, expecting another collections call from the anesthesiology group. "Ms. Emily Harper." The voice was brisk, professional, tinged with concern. "This is fraud prevention at Piedmont Bank. We're calling about unusual activity on a joint savings account ending in 4499. Several large transfers attempted in the last 48 hours have triggered a security hold." My breath caught. That account, the one they'd opened for me freshman year of college, the one I thought I had closed years ago. "We've placed a temporary freeze. and need verbal confirmation from all signers before any funds can move. I closed my eyes, a slow smile spreading across my face for the first time in weeks, and then the bank called me with a freeze alert. The woman on the line repeated the account number twice to be sure I heard correctly. It was the joint savings my parents had opened for me the summer I left for college, the one they insisted on in case of emergencies. I had forgotten it existed. I thought I had emptied it years ago and walked away. Apparently, they never removed their names, and apparently, they had been using it as their private slush fund ever since. Ma'am, the fraud specialist continued, we show 3 attempted outgoing transfers in the past 4 days, each for $15,000, all to an account titled Harper Bennett Wedding Fund. The last attempt triggered our system. Do you authorize these? I laughed once, short and sharp. Absolutely not. Freeze everything. Remove me as primary owner effective immediately and flag every transaction for the last 5 years. I'll be in branch tomorrow with ID and a police report if necessary. She hesitated only a second. Done. You'll receive confirmation by email within the hour. And Ms. Harper, we're required to notify all signers of the freeze. Let them be notified, I said, and hung up. I opened my laptop, logged into the ancient online banking portal I hadn't touched since graduation, and watched the transaction history load like a crime scene in slow motion. There they were, neat, regular withdrawals over the years, always just under the amount that would trigger human review, always accompanied by innocuous memos like family gift or home maintenance. And then in the last month, the big ones, 15,000, 12,000, 10,000, all flowing straight into the wedding account Ryan had mentioned. My money quietly siphoned while I changed IV bags and learned the names of heart medications no toddler should ever need. I was still scrolling, rage turning cold and precise, when I reached a transfer from 5 years earlier that stopped my breath. $20,000 dated 2 weeks after Lainey's first engagement had ended abruptly. The memo line read, for land, don't tell the little one. My hands went numb. The little one. That was me, always had been. Whatever crisis Lainey had faced back then, whatever money had been needed to make it disappear, they had taken it from the account they still controlled and made sure I never knew. I sat back staring at the screen until the numbers blurred. The pattern was older than Noah, older than my marriage, older than any pretense of independence I thought I had built. They had never stopped treating me like a resource to be managed and a risk to be contained. That night, I drove to my parents' house under cover of darkness. I still had a key from the years I house sat their golden retriever. The place was quiet, wedding gifts already stacked in the foyer like monuments to their triumph. I went straight to the study, to the locked fire safe, where Mom kept what she called sensitive papers. The combination was still Lainey's birthday. Inside, beneath insurance policies and their wills, was a thick manila envelope with my mother's handwriting on the front, private, do not open. I took it, heart hammering, and left as silently as I had come. Back home, under the glow of my desk lamp, I slit the envelope open. Inside were lab reports from a national DNA testing company dated 5 years ago, 2 profiles, one labeled Mother Margaret Harper, the other labeled Child Lainey Harper. The conclusion page was highlighted in frantic yellow, probability of maternity, 0.00%. A post-it in Mom's writing was stuck to the corner, paid consultant to bury results. Told Lainey stress-related illness. Will redo when timing better. I read it 3 times before the meaning sank in. Lainey was not their biological daughter, or at least not Mom's. The transfer 5 years ago had not been for a broken engagement. It had been to silence a lab to purchase a lie big enough to swallow an entire family history. They had hidden it from Lainey. They had hidden it from me. And they had paid for the silence with money they later replaced from the same account they were now draining for peonies and string quartets. I sat there until dawn, documents spread across the table like autopsy photos. Every secret they had ever kept was suddenly connected by a single thread appearance. Above everything, even blood. I took photographs of every page, uploaded them to the same encrypted folder as the hospital video, and added a new label, family. 9 days later, the morning of the wedding, I stood in the bridal suite at the country club in the pale blue mother-of-pearl dress Lainey had chosen for me, hairpinned, makeup, perfect thumb drive, tucked into the hidden pocket sewn inside my clutch. Ryan had texted at 6. Everything is ready. Lainey knows. She's with us. I was adjusting Noah's tiny bow tie in the mirror. My son healthy enough to be the ring bearer only because of miracles and machines. When the door opened and closed behind me, with a soft click, the lock turned. My mother stood there in her champagne silk suit, face tight with the smile she reserved for difficult junior league members. "We need to talk," she said, voice low-key, still in her hand. That morning, I got a knock on the dressing room door. Mom had locked us in. And then the bank called me with a freeze alert. The fraud specialist's voice was calm, almost apologetic, as she read back the account number I hadn't thought about in 10 years. It was the joint savings my parents opened the week I left for college, the one they insisted would be for real emergencies only. I had emptied my portion the day I graduated and assumed they had closed it. They never did. Their names were still on it, and so apparently was their right to treat it like a private ATM. 3 attempted transfers in the last 72 hours, she continued. 15,000 each, all directed to an account titled Harper Bennett Wedding Expenses. The final attempt exceeded our velocity threshold and triggered an automatic hold. "Do you authorize release of these funds?" "No." I said the word coming out steadier than I felt. "I authorize nothing. Freeze the entire account. Remove my name as primary owner and send me a complete transaction history going back 5 years. I'll be in branch tomorrow with police if necessary." "Consider it done," she replied. "All signers will be notified within the hour." I hung up and opened the ancient online banking portal on my laptop. The login still worked. The balance made my breath stop. $187,000, almost exactly the amount I had quietly saved and invested since Noah was born. Money I thought was safely in my own high-yield account. They had been moving it in pieces for months, always just under reporting limits, always with memos like reimbursement or family support. The most recent transfers were labeled simply Floral Deposit String Quartet Saturday Venue Hold, my son's future college fund redirected to Ecuadorian peonies and fairy-like canopies while he lay wired to machines. I was still staring at the screen, rage crystallizing into something cold and useful, when one older transaction caught my eye. 5 years ago, almost to the day, Lainey's first engagement imploded a single withdrawal of $20,000. The memo line read, "For Lon, don't tell the little one." The little one. That had always been me. I knew then that whatever secret they were buying 5 years ago was the same currency they were spending now, silence purchased with whatever resources they could reach. That night after Noah was asleep, I drove to their house. The wedding chaos had left it empty and echoing. I still had a key from the years I watered plants and fed their dog. I went straight to the study, to the fire safe hidden behind the framed photo of Mom receiving the Atlanta Woman of the Year award. The combination was still Lainey's birthday. Inside, beneath the deed to the lake house and their updated wills, lay a thick manila envelope with Mom's handwriting on the front: "Private, do not open." I took it, heart hammering against my ribs, and left as quietly as I had come. Back home, under the single lamp in my office, I slit the seal. Laboratory letterhead stared up at me, dated 5 years earlier. 2 genetic profiles, one labeled Margaret Harper Mother, one labeled Lainey Harper Child. The conclusion was circled in red: probability of maternity 0.00%. A yellow post-it in Mom's frantic scrawl clung to the page: paid lab director to suppress. Told L, stress-induced false positive. Will retest after wedding number 2 when calmer. I read it 4 times before the words stopped swimming. Lainey was not my mother's biological daughter. The 20,000 had not been for a broken engagement. It had been hush money to bury a truth that would have toppled the entire carefully constructed Harper dynasty. They had stolen from the joint account then, and they were stealing from it now, all to keep the photograph perfect. I photographed every page, uploaded the images to the same encrypted folder that already held the hospital video and the dollar envelope scan, and labeled the new subfolder Blood. Then I closed the laptop, looked in on Noah breathing peacefully through his night monitor, and felt the last tether to the people who raised me snap clean in two. 9 days later, the morning of the wedding, I stood in the country club bridal suite, in the pale blue dress Lainey had chosen for me, hair swept up, makeup, flawless thumb drive, tucked inside the hidden pocket of my clutch. Ryan had texted at dawn, "Projector is loaded. Lainey knows everything. She's ready." Noah miracle that he was sat on the settee in his tiny navy suit, clutching the ring pillow and smiling at his reflection. I was adjusting his bow tie when the door opened and closed with a soft, deliberate click. The lock turned. Mom stood there in champagne silk keys still in her hand. eyes already pleading and threatening at the same time. That morning, I got a knock on the dressing room door. Mom had locked us in. That morning, I got a knock on the dressing room door. Mom had locked us in. She leaned back against the wood as though her body alone could barricade the truth. Dad stood behind her, already sweating through his morning coat, eyes fixed on the carpet. Mom's voice came out low and venomous. Hand over your phone and whatever nonsense you've cooked up. You will smile, you will sit quietly, and you will let your sister have her day. If one word of this leaves your mouth, we will disown you before the salad course. No money, no family, no nothing. And Emily, sweetheart, who do you think 300 people out there will believe? The parents who raised you, or the angry little girl who's always wanted what her sister has? I looked at her and felt nothing but calm. I reached into my clutch pressed play and let her own recorded voice fill the small room. Emily doesn't need to know details, just make everything look perfect. Do it like back then, with the older girl. Dad flinched as if slapped. Mom's face went the color of old ash. I turned the screen toward them. First the empty mom and dad chairs under hospital lights, then Noah wired and bandaged chest rising and falling by the grace of machines. I let the images sit there silent and undeniable. This is what my anger looks like, I said softly. This is what you left behind. Mom recovered first, lifting her chin. You have no idea the sacrifices we made to keep this family respectable. Then tell me, I answered, right now, or in 5 minutes the entire ballroom sees these pictures, hears these recordings, and learns exactly what respect cost my son. Your choice. Dad's voice cracked. Lainey isn't. She isn't biologically ours. Your mother had a pregnancy very young. Private adoption. Years later, we had you. When Lainey started asking questions, we paid to keep the results quiet. We told her it was stress. We did it to protect her, to protect all of us. Image is everything, Emily. Without it, we're nothing. Mom nodded, tears glittering but not falling. Some truths only destroy. I stepped closer until she had to meet my eyes. You taught me love was something you edited for the Christmas letter. Today, that ends. If you choose facade one more time, I choose truth for everyone out there. Walk out with me now and let the day go forward honestly, or stay here and watch the screen do it for you. The silence was absolute. Mom's hand trembled on the key. Dad looked suddenly old, as if the years had arrived all at once. From the ballroom came the muffled sound of chairs scraping, guests settling, the low hum of anticipation. Then the MC's cheerful baritone drifted clearly through the door. Before we begin the ceremony, the family has prepared a short message they'd like to share with you all. Outside the door, I heard the MC say, "We'll begin with a family message." Outside the door, I heard the MC say, "We'll begin with a family message." The three of us stepped into the ballroom like actors who had forgotten their lines. 300 faces turned toward the screen, expecting baby photos and sentimental music. Instead, the lights dimmed and the hospital waiting room filled the wall. Two empty chairs glowing under cold fluorescence, the brass plaque between them reading Mom and Dad. The timestamp crawled forward for 30 silent seconds, while I sat alone in the reflection of the window. Then the recovery room, Noah barely visible beneath tubes and wires, his small chest rising and falling by machine alone. A woman near the front let out a broken sound. Someone else began to cry openly. The screen cut to the single-dollar bill inside the white envelope that had sat on the head table all week as a cute family tradition. The MC face, suddenly gray, opened the real envelope with trembling fingers. He cleared his throat twice. "It contains $1, he said, voice cracking, and a note that reads, 'This is your priority.'" The words hung in the air. The hall fell so quiet I could hear Mom's sharp intake of breath beside me. Ryan took the microphone from the stunned MC. "One more thing," he said calmly. He pressed play. My parents' voices spilled from the speakers recorded in their kitchen 6 weeks ago. "We'll just tell Emily the in-laws want Noah for a few weeks of recovery bonding," Mom laughed. "It'll keep him out of the way so we can focus on the wedding and the send-off brunch." Dad's easy chuckle followed. "She'll believe anything if it sounds helpful." The murmurs turned to gasps. Phones rose. Mom swayed. Dad caught her elbow but looked ready to collapse himself. Then the final slide appeared, laboratory letterhead, 2 DNA graphs. The probability of maternity circled in red, 0.00%. Mom's own handwriting on the yellow post-it beneath paid to bury results. The room exploded into chaos. Aunt Claire stood screaming at my father. A cousin dropped her champagne flute. It shattered like ice. Mom folded slowly into the nearest chair, mouth open, no sound coming out. Dad stared at the screen as though it had personally betrayed him. At the back of the aisle, Lainey stood frozen in her gown veil, trembling in the air conditioning. For one endless second, every eye turned to her. Then deliberately, she reached up, unclasped the pearl comb, and let the veil drift to the marble floor. She took one step forward, then another, train whispering behind her eyes, locked on mine through the stunned crowd. My sister took off her veil and walked straight toward me. My sister took off her veil and walked straight toward me. The crowd parted as if an invisible hand drew them aside. Lainey's train whispered over the marble, her eyes shining with tears, but steady, unwavering. When she reached me, she stopped, took both my hands, and spoke so clearly the microphone wasn't needed. Family, she said, voice trembling only once, is not the people who hide the truth to save their own reflection. Family is the people who choose truth even when it costs everything. Today, in front of every one of you, I choose my sister. A ripple of soft cries and murmured amen swept the room. Ryan stepped forward, smiling through wet eyes, and offered his arm to Noah, who clutched the ring pillow like a tiny champion. I slipped my arm through Lainey's. Together we turned toward the altar. No one stood to give the bride away. Mom sat crumpled in her champagne silk, Dad beside her staring at nothing. Both of them suddenly small against the vast floral arch they had paid so dearly to perfect. Not a single cousin, uncle, or country club friend rose to replace them. The silence was louder than any protest. We walked, slowly, deliberately, mother of the ring bearer and bride sisters bound by something stronger than blood. Noah toddled between us, scattering petals with serious concentration. When we reached Ryan, he kissed Lainey gently, then leaned down to kiss Noah's curls, then to my surprise kissed my cheek too. The officiant, eyes shining, simply said, "Who presents this woman to be married?" And the entire room answered in one voice, "Her sister does." The ceremony that followed was short, honest, and tear-soaked in the best way. Vows were spoken, rings exchanged, and when they kissed, the applause was thunderous, cleansing, final. 2 weeks later, after the honeymoon pictures had flooded social media and the thank you notes were written, I sat at my kitchen table with Noah asleep upstairs. I took the original dollar bill, creased now from its journey, and placed it inside heavy cream stationery. I wrote only one line beneath my careful signature. This time, I choose my son. I sealed it, drove to the big white house that no longer felt like any kind of home, and dropped it in their mailbox myself. I did not wait for an answer. There was none to give. The real answer came in waves I never expected. Cards arrived from nurses who had held my hand in the ICU. A GoFundMe appeared overnight, started anonymously by the cardiac team, titled "For Noah's Future." Within days, it surpassed every medical bill, and then some strangers and friends alike pouring love into the space my parents had left empty. The mom from Noah's playgroup organized meal trains that lasted a month. Ryan and Lainey moved their spare bedroom furniture into our guest room just in case we need more family sleepovers. Hospital volunteers who once brought me coffee now brought toys and casseroles and stories of their own battles won. My table became crowded with people who showed up, who stayed, who never once asked how things looked from the outside. I learned that family is not a photograph you crop until everyone smiles the same. It is the circle that widens when someone chooses truth over comfort, love over legacy. It is the people who run toward the beeping monitors instead of away from them. And if they ever ask again, I'll send another dollar. But this time with silence. And that was the last time I ever let their version of family define mine. Noah is thriving now, his scar fading into a thin silver line he'll carry like a badge of survival. Lainey and Ryan come over every Sunday with takeout and board games, and our house is loud with laughter that doesn't need to be staged for anyone's approval. The people who showed up when the monitors were beeping are the same ones who show up now when the only emergency is running out of juice boxes. That is my family, chosen, real, unbreakable. If this story hit you the way it still hits me every time I tell it, if it made you angry, made you cry, or made you cheer out loud for two sisters who finally chose each other, then please hit that subscribe button right now. Turn on the bell so you never miss the next one, because there are so many more stories of women rising from the ashes of betrayal. And I promise every single one will leave you feeling stronger than when you clicked play. Drop a comment and tell me, have you ever had to draw that same hard line with family? What did it cost you and what did it give you? In the end, I read every single comment, and your stories are the reason I keep sharing mine. Let's fill this space with truth, with healing, and with the kind of love that shows up no matter what. See you in the next one.